There is a time in every man's life when he's faced with a question that he should know the answer to.
We should make a campfire. Go grab some hardwood.
Yeah, totally. I wonder what he means by hardwood. So let's talk about hardwoods versus softwoods. Do you want to start with hardwood or softwood first?
Go with
so
hardwood.
The first hardwood is sugar maple. What can you tell me about sugar maple?
So what everybody knows about sugar maple, because of the name, it's used in the making of maple syrup. We used to have a sugar woods here that my father and I and a number of other friends ran for years, and there's still a couple of sugar woods in this area. However, sugar maple, which is also known as Acer saccharinum, that's the Latin name of it, it is a very desirable hardwood for timber, particularly for making furniture and flooring. It is the harder version of the maples that we have here, and it's a very attractive wood, nice grain, and very tough. So this is a typical, fairly mature sugar maple, okay? I'll show a younger one in a few seconds to show the bark gets quite rough on these sugar maples as they get older. Sometimes you mix up a sugar maple with a red maple. It's difficult to tell unless you have the leaves, and the leaves are very distinct. Anyway, in back here, there's another one that's a younger one. Well, there's a couple of younger ones. This is a much younger sugar maple, but it's a sugar maple, quite a healthy one at that. So, move on to the next one.
Yes, actually, here's an important question. What is the difference between hardwood and softwood?
So, the name implies, but isn't always exactly the case, that the ones on this side that we're going to look at, the wood is tougher, harder than the ones on this side. That's not entirely true about all of them. There are some very tough softwoods and there are some softer hardwoods. We'll talk about that when we go through them. The main difference between hardwood and softwood is also known as coniferous trees, and they generally they seed by cones, whereas hardwoods have flowers on them.
All right, next one, softwood.
Balsam fir, its most prominent use in Nova Scotia, obviously, is the Christmas tree.
Isn't it a little big?
It's not big, it's just full.
Balsam fir also can be used for a number of other things. It's desirable as a pulpwood species because it has long, tough fibers similar to the spruces. But in our particular area, there are some issues with balsam fir. They tend to be susceptible to rot, and I don't know why that is, but you know, every couple of trees that you cut into, if you're harvesting balsam fir, it'll have rot at the core, and you know, that means it's really not any good for timber, that particular tree. When you do get a good one, they actually make nice finish wood as well. This tree is a balsam fir. Now that's probably 30 years old. I'm guessing if I cut into that, the core would be have rot in it. But some of them surprise you. Some of them are, and you can use that for pulpwood too. But if you take a look at the bark on a balsam fir, the bark is much smoother than what it is. And when they're young, it's very smooth. Now this one here's, you know, a middle-aged balsam fir, and it's alive. Okay, and if you compare the bark on this to its neighbor, that's a red spruce.
So this you're telling me is a Christmas tree?
Christmas tree plantation is like a garden. I shape them the way they want, and it's quite a process, and it's quite an industry in Nova Scotia.
So we're next hardwood. Any guesses? What do you think it's going to be?
I'm thinking red maple. And it's
Can you see through the tape?
No, I can't see through
All
the
right,
tape.
cool.
So red maple is also known as swamp maple. There's a couple other slang terms for it, but it's actually it's called Acer rubra, I think is the correct Latin name for it. Red maple, first of all, I like it for two things. I've milled a little bit of it, and it's much softer than sugar maple. So it's called soft maple, where sugar maple is called hard maple. And it's not desirable as a wood for making flooring because it's not as tough. However, it is desirable for veneer for furniture or actually making furniture or that type of thing, because the wood is just as attractive as the sugar maple. So
What's the difference between, I mean, they're both maple.
they're both maple.
So
Sugar maple is our national tree. That's the leaf that's on our Canadian
maple
flag is the sugar maple. The red maple, if you want to get technical, you can identify by their leaves much easier than you can just by looking at the tree. The sugar maple have those round serrations in their leaves, and the red maple, they have like a very sharp, pronounced V between the lobes on their leaves. Anyway,
all right.
that's red maple. And another thing about red maple, sugar maple is the number one that's tapped for maple syrup, but red maple, the sap is equally good, and actually my father used to think it was better. Tamarack is, it's known by about 6 different names: juniper, larch, hackmatack, Larix laricina. Back in the day when everybody had their own septic system, it was used for covering of septic systems, or it was used for posts or anything that would go in the ground, because it, much like hemlock, is very resistant to rot when it's in the wet. It can be used for decking, for instance. It can be used for railings and things like that that are going to be exposed to the weather. I only have a couple of actually large tamarack on my property, and I've been saving them for sometime when I have a project. I'm going to cut them down and mill them. So this here is a place that we did a sanitation harvest last year. We had a little bit of a bark beetle outbreak here, but what I left, you can get a good view of them right there. Those trees up there that don't have needles on them, people think that they're dead spruce, but they aren't. Those are what we call tamarack or hackmatack. And I only have a couple of big ones that are merchantable on the whole property. The thing that we forgot to mention when we were talking about the species that we're going to look at today is that tamarack is the one softwood species that loses its needles in the fall, just like a hardwood species. You can see 1, 2, 3, 4, there's 5 right there, and 3 of them are big whoppers.
What do we got here for hardwood? Beech.
That's called Fagus grandifolia. That doesn't sound good, does it? I think it was used, much the same as maple for construction things, and I don't know if it was used for flooring, but we don't have any amount of it here to make it a commercially viable thing. Here's one of the only mature beech trees that's on the property, and it's going to stay here the rest of its life because it's kind of hollow down here, and I don't think there's much of a market for them. You can tell in the winter time when you're going through hardwood stands, the beech trees' leaves turn brown and they tend to stay on most of the winter. There'll be places where the branches have the leaves on them and they don't fall until later in the winter sometimes.
Hemlock.
Now,
Okay.
hemlock is a really desirable softwood. Unfortunately, right in this particular area, and I don't know why, maybe it's because we're such a big red spruce area that it's been choked out, but hemlock, much the same as tamarack, is resistant to rot. So if you're making a raised garden bed, for instance, or if you're making joists for a floor of a camp that might be exposed to dampness and moisture, or if you're doing decking. Now, most of the decking that you buy at the building supplies places, it's hemlock. And there's a lot of hemlock in other parts of Nova Scotia and around the Maritimes. It's part of what we call the Acadian forest, and it's there's a stand of them up on the woodlot at UMB that's just spectacular. It looks a lot like some of my big red spruce stands here. And
it just sounds nice, the name hemlock.
Yeah, no,
Mighty. It sounds like a mighty tree.
I did a little community project last year where I took 3 days and I milled a bunch of hemlock that they got donated, and it was a community project to make raised garden beds. And it was the first time I'd milled it. I was a little apprehensive when I agreed to take on the project. And when I started milling it, it just milled beautifully. Like spruce is hard to mill to get smooth cuts unless you really know what you're doing. You have your blades really nice. Hemlock, I think you could have used a dull blade and got good wood out of it. I got had these logs that they looked pretty sketchy when they bought them in, and when I milled it, the stuff looked really nice.
How do these compare, hardwood, softwood, or any of them, milling wise? Are, like you just mentioned, some of them harder to mill than others?
Yeah.
Or?
Now, spruce, you have to have everything dialed in perfectly to mill spruce. I milled some sugar maple, and the first time I did it, I didn't have much luck with it. I think it was more to do with the logs and getting wood that had twist and whatnot. And now I've since dried a bunch of that stuff, and it came out really nicely after it was stickered and had weight on it. And I didn't understand this at the time, but that's what they do at the hardwood mills when they mill these desirable hardwood trees into boards where they're going to make either furniture or flooring. They put huge amounts of weight on them when they stack them, and they dry them in a kiln with weight on them so that they flatten them out. In terms of milling, I found that to be very difficult. I found that to be very easy. And spruce, which is my biggest, market demand, it's kind of middle of the road. If you have everything dialed in, you can do a nice job on it. You're still going to get little waves, and the big industrial commercial mills get waves on their wood when they mill it. You just don't see that because as soon as it comes off their big saws, it goes through a planer.
All right, next hardwood.
Gray birch. Now, gray birch, we call it wire birch. The most common use for it is for firewood. The bark looks something like what we call paper birch. So it's sometimes you get them mixed up, but you can tell by the distinct branch types that it's very wiry. There's all kinds of little tiny branches on the big branches, and the leaves look similar. I can point out the difference, but we're not going to go into the technical differences in the leaves. But gray birch, and I think somebody said it's a hybrid too of other birches, but I'm not sure about that. But its scientific name is Betulia populifolia. So it's a mouthful. Black spruce, and that's it's Picea is the term for the spruce species, and Picea mariana. I always forget that one, so I had to check. Black spruce here, we have it grows in barren areas, and we have some here. We have some in areas that were obviously old fire burns and places that are might not be really well drained, but it's quite an important part of the northern boreal forest, and the wood is good wood. It's strong, tough wood, very similar. I don't think if you milled it, you could tell much difference between black spruce and red spruce. And I've milled a little bit of it, and it's good wood, and it's used in. I think it's one of the most desirable species for the craft pulp industry, which we can't live without, although in Nova Scotia you'd never know that. There you go, there's my dig. You can identify it from a distance by it has, if you look at the top, it looks like a club around, it's all clumped together.
Is most dimensional lumber or building supplies lumber softwood?
Yes.
I don't know, that's a stupid question, but
Yeah, no, that's exactly that's exactly what a lot of people wouldn't know. Like
Okay.
and it's much less expensive.
Okay.
Like it's now the old guys when they did those logging sleds, we used to our logs all moved out to the mill that was right here on sleds in the wintertime. They made the runners. I think the ones on ours were made out of yellow birch. They milled the yellow birch in the mill, and they because I remember there were spare runners up in our old shed up on the farm, and they were made out of yellow birch.
white birch.
So white birch is also known as paper birch. Now, paper birch is the bark peels off in sheets like paper. People actually have used it for paper, but it's also the birch that they use to make birch bark canoes.
Cool.
Okay, and it's called Betula papyrifera. So paper in Latin was papyrifera. Okay, so and white birch in this area, a lot of it doesn't survive to maturity, but the stuff that does, it makes a very good wood, just the same as yellow birch, which we'll talk about later. It's desirable for finishing furniture, I make cutting boards and things like that out of it, and it's a very attractive wood. When you get one with sound heartwood, it's got a rose color to it, and it's a really nice wood. The mills that buy hardwood logs will take it at the same price as they will yellow birch. It's a very desirable species if you get a sound one.
You brought up a good point. Lumber prices. Is there a difference between hardwood and softwood generally?
Yes,
lumber?
yeah.
What's the most desirable? What do you make more money on?
It's actually hard to get a load of hardwood logs. So time-wise, my time is more well spent doing harvest the way I harvest. I do patch cuts, selective cuts on softwood, and we haven't even hit my most profitable wood yet, but we will.
Okay.
If I had a truckload of sugar maple and a truckload of spruce fir saw logs, the sugar maple would be worth more, but time-wise, it would take much longer.
Gotcha.
Okay. There's not a consistent stand of good quality saw logs. Like the saw logs that when we do saw load to the hardwood mills, you generally are looking for a straight piece, and if you get a piece 8 or 10 feet long that's straight, so they want the lengths to be 8'6", 7'6", and I think 6'6" they'll take as well, because it's hard to get. The woods here are primarily red spruce, balsam fir, and with a mixture of maples and birches.
Okay.
But you know, even in our mixed forest that's never been basically clear cut, it's not a monoculture, that's a catchphrase that I don't really like. But the dominant species in our version of the Acadian forest is a red spruce. So that's an example of a paper birch, a Betulia papyrifera. Okay, you can tell it's not a particularly healthy one, although it's alive. I doubt very much that has good timber wood in it or good lumber in it. But you can see, where the bark is peeling off in big sheets and layers, where it gets its name from. So that's a paper birch, or a Betulia papyrifera.
Let's talk about softwood. While we peel this one off, if we haven't mentioned your favorite or your personal least favorite wood, let us know what that is in the comments. So, red spruce.
So red spruce, and that's a Picea rubens. Okay, rubens we already said is the Latin word for red, and Picea is spruce. Red spruce is the king in Nova Scotia. It's our provincial tree. It's the symbol is our provincial tree, and particularly in the Cobequid Mountain region, we have one of the largest unbroken blocks of red spruce anywhere, and it's high quality wood. The majority of my timber is red spruce, and it's the desired species at the industrial mills to make dimensional lumber, which is your 2x4s, your 2x6s, 2x8s, 1x6s, strapping, all of those things. The majority of them in the building centers in Nova Scotia come from red spruce from the big industrial mills. I mill, when I get really good clear logs, and I saved out 20 or 30 from the winter, I get really good clear lumber from those types of logs. When I get stuff that's 14 or 15 inches at the top, you know, you can get a whack of wood out of our little mill from one of those logs. Hard work, but it's very rewarding. Red spruce has some issues, and some of this stuff is misunderstood and misinterpreted by the public. When red spruce gets to maturity, there's a natural pest that it's very susceptible to, and that's the spruce bark beetle, not the European longhorn bark beetle, which has been brought in here by mismanagement at the Halifax port. It's a native species, and when it gets to a weakened tree, one that might have had its roots torn up in windstorms, or it's hit by another tree, or it's just old and doesn't have much sap to be able to fight them off, then the bark beetle will attack it. And that's one of the reasons why I'm not in favor of protecting old growth forest that contains spruce. Because when you protect it, that means it's not going to be harvested, it's not going to be managed, and that also means that it's going to be susceptible to bark beetle, which is a fire hazard and an economic dead loss. Out west, they have the mountain pine beetle that was unmanaged. So many of those fires, although the climate change, people like to say it's all climate change, some of it's climate change. But if you've got 1,000 acres of dead softwood trees with the needles hanging on them, a lightning strike makes a disaster, and we've seen that in recent years. But red spruce is a very desirable timber species, and it's the main component of the Acadian forest that's in Nova Scotia. We're in the midst of one of the best red spruce stands you'll see anywhere. These here, this is our money tree in Nova Scotia. Now, this is a mature red spruce. This probably somewhere in the vicinity of 70 to 90 years old. I can't really tell, but this area here had a small outbreak of bark beetle from some wind damage 2 years ago, and I cleaned it up and nothing has come back, and there's a lot of good timber. You can see out through there's a few hardwood, but the predominant species is the red spruce, and it's my main timber species.
Okay, this is the last hardwood on the list. The yellow birch.
And that's my favorite hardwood species. It's Betula alleganensa. I think that's how you pronounce that, is the Latin term for it. It's a very desirable timber. It's tough. It's stringy. When you go to split it for firewood, it's the hardest wood to split. And unlike red maple, which is my favorite firewood species, but yellow birch makes really great furniture, flooring, finishes. I've made all kinds of stuff, flights, cutting boards, a variety of stuff from yellow birch. And here's I don't know if you can see that piece over there. So that is going to be, I actually, the other day I made what's called a breadboard or a kneading board with one piece off of that, and I'm going to make two more, one for my daughter and one for a wedding present this summer for one of our relatives. That's yellow birch as well. That's a little cutting board that's yellow birch, and look at the nice grain in that. You know, it's pretty nice. That was out of an old log. It was a log sitting around for a while, and I just milled it for the heck of it. We're on what we call, it's kind of like a hardwood ridge here, and it's in the middle of our old sugar woods. But in that sugar woods, we've got quite a number of yellow birch, and there's some other species as well. But this one here is a typical young yellow birch, and if you notice the tint, the yellow tint on the bark, very, very distinctive. And this is well, it's probably going to have a log in it eventually, but this is probably 20 to 30 years old, maybe a little bit younger than that.
The last one, do you have any guesses what the last one is?
I can't even remember what we had on the list there.
There's one missing here.
Okay, I'm not sure.
It's my favorite one.
Red spruce, black spruce, hemlock, tamarack, balsam fir. I'm not sure. What is it?
This last one is. Before I rip this off, if you made it this far in the video, thanks for watching. Appreciate it. Like the video if you like this video. And the last one is
subscribe. Okay. You got me. I wasn't sure where we were going with that. Well, thanks a lot for watching, and don't forget to subscribe, and hope you enjoyed this.
All right. The Latin name for beech is sonova, right?
Sonova, yeah.
Sorry, that.